Hi, this is a very basic video tutorial on how to install Linux Mint 18. So the first step, anytime you're doing a upgrade or new installation of the operating system, you always want to back up any important files that you have. So in order to do that, you can just attach a external hard drive. Here I have a Western Digital external hard drive attached. I'm going to go into my home directory, look for any important files that I want to back up, make a copy of it, and then just paste it into my external hard drive. This step could take a long time if you have a lot of files to back up, so just take your time and make sure you don't miss anything. Once that's done, you can unmount your external hard drive. Then you're done with your backup. The next step is to download the LinuxMint18 ISO image, which you can use for the installation. And then we'll create a bootable operating system image after it's downloaded. So you go to LinuxMint.com, find the downloads page, and then choose which version of Linux Mint you want to download. So here we have Cinnamon or Mate. Cinnamon is a slightly more modern desktop environment based on the GNOME 3 environment. So I'm going to choose the 64-bit Cinnamon download. Then you can just choose a download location that is close to you and save the ISO image to your hard drive. Once the file has finished downloading, the next step is to create a bootable USB thumb drive, some other USB device. So you can go and find your ISO download, probably in your downloads folder, or in another location if you chose somewhere else to save it. Then what I'm going to do is attach a USB thumb drive. You'll know that's about at least 2 gigabytes in size, just because that's about the size of the bootable ISO image. So once you've attached the USB stick and you're ready to install it, make sure that you don't have anything important that you want to save on that USB drive, just because this process will delete everything that's not currently on it. Next, you'll need to find the device name of the USB stick. So you can use a command called df, and then I like to use the -h option, which puts the numbers in a human-readable format. So the df command gives you an idea of disk usage on your system, and it also prints out information about the different devices that you have attached. So you can see here we have the USB stick is attached under the device name of /dev/sdb1. Now the number 1 is actually the number of the partition that's mounted, but we don't really care about the partition because we're going to be blowing away everything that's currently on that device. So the way that we turn this normal USB stick into a bootable Linux Mint image is by using the dd command. And this command needs to be run as a super user usually, so you may need to use the do command. So I'm going to sudo dd, and I'm going to give it the input file, which is my Linux Mint ISO image. And the output file is going to be the name of the USB device. So here we're going to use /dev/sdb. And as I said, you don't need to add the 1 because 1 is just the number of the partition, and that's not going to be relevant after we current contents of the device. The last parameter to pass to the dd command is BS, which is the block size. The default is 512 bytes, which is pretty small, which means it'll take a long time. It'll kind of do that only write a little bit at a time. So the number that's recommended on the Linux Mint site is about 1 gigabyte. So using this block size, the write process will go a little bit faster. Okay, so one thing to note about the dd command, just double check your input and output parameters. Want to make sure that the output file is actually the USB stick and not some other like local hard drive or some other device that you have attached. That would be bad to be overwritten. So the dd command has the nickname of disk destroyer, just because it is dangerous. That way it can overwrite data that you actually want to keep if you're not careful. Once the command has finished, then it's time to, well, you can check if everything went successfully just by unmounting and then remounting, or unplugging and replugging in your USB stick. And we can just check to make sure that looks like it is in fact a Linux Mint bootable CD. So these contacts look correct. So the next step is to just reboot your system and boot. Tell your computer to boot onto the bootable USB drive. And while your computer reboots, you should get a quick screen which shows an option to choose a boot device. So what you want to do is just choose the F12 button or whatever button you're using. It uses to select a non-default boot device. And then once you select that, you should get a menu that shows the different boot device options, and you want to make sure that you choose the new USB drive that you just created with the bootable LinuxMint18 ISO image on it. If you manage to choose the right boot device, then you should see a screen like this showing you Linux Mint is going to automatically boot in several seconds. Once that completes, the system will start booting from the LinuxMint18 image. Now this hasn't done any installation yet, so everything is still intact on your local hard drive. This just gives you a chance to try out LinuxMint18 before the actual installation to make sure that everything is working correctly on your system. You can check things like that the Wi-Fi is working, that any of your external devices are working, etc. So once you're done testing out the system, go into a web browser and just make sure that you can actually get to the internet. That's working okay. Then the next step is to actually start the installation. So the installation wizard will guide you through all the different steps. Everything is pretty straightforward. I'll choose English. I'll choose to include third-party software. This will add things like proprietary software or drivers, like video drivers, that may not have an open source driver available. So there's a few different options here. You can install Linux Mint alongside your existing installation. In this case, I want to erase everything. I don't want to do a dual boot older Linux Mint. I just want to install the new Linux Mint 18 on the entire disk. So it will automatically partition the entire drive. It'll give you a root partition and the swap partition and everything else that you need. Okay, this is just a confirmation to let you know that after this step, the contents of your disk will be destroyed and then replaced with a fresh installation of Linux Mint. Here I choose the time zone. Next step is just to choose the type of keyboard that you're using. And then you can give it a username, just a default username, a name like a host name for your computer, and give it a default username and password. So this username and password will actually have admin rights, and then after the installation, you can install like normal users if you want additional users. I'm going to set this one to log in automatically after installation, which is good for like a single user system if you don't have multiple people logging into the computer. At this point, we just wait for Linux Mint to complete installing the set of files that it needs to boot up. Okay, once the installation has finished, you'll be presented with a little confirmation pop-up window, and then you just click on the Restart Now button in order to boot into the new installation. If you wanted to, you could continue to use the just the one that you were running if you wanted to play with it more before you boot into the new one, but we don't have any reason to here. So it looks like it's starting to boot up. And it should, once everything is set up, it should automatically log in with my demo username. Once the system finishes booting up, if you chose the automatic login, you'll go directly to this screen. If you didn't choose that option, you'll have a login screen and you'll enter your username and password. But since we chose the automatic login, we go directly to this welcome screen, which gives you a bunch of links for documentation and some other things that you can get started with if you're new to Linux Mint. So at this point, the installation is done. The next steps is maybe to install some software. So if you want to update your system, you can click on this little shield button, and you can choose some different options, like always update everything, get the latest updates, or only use this select stable and safe updates. So I'll just choose to always update everything. And then it'll give you a list of packages which have updated since the Linux ISO was created. So these are a bunch of different new packages that are updated. So I'll leave that off for now, but you can update at your convenience. So if you want to install additional software, so for example, I want to install the Steam software package to play games, you can go to Software Manager, you enter the password that I had entered earlier in the install screen, and the Software Manager will give you a nice graphical user interface for installing applications. So I'm going to look for Steam, find it here, and I just click the install button. So if the software has some license agreement, that you'll be prompted to agree with the license agreement here. Okay, and now Steam is installed. So after I've finished installing Steam, I'm also going to install OBS Studio, which is the software that I used to record this video. So if I search for OBS Studio in the Software Manager, You can see that we don't get any results. Now the reason is that OBS Studio is not in the default Linux Mint repositories. So we'll have to go out to the internet and add a new package repository. It's called Open Broadcaster Software. I click on the Linux version, and I go to Ubuntu. So this gives you a couple of commands that you can run to install OBS Studio. What I do is I copy this command to a terminal window. And this first step adds the OBS repository to your local system so that you'll have all the packages available for installing and then for later for upgrading. And I'm going to copy the second command back into my terminal. This command will update from the repository and then install the new OBS Studio. So now that that's done, I should be able to go back to the software manager to close it. Now we can check in our menu. We can see that OBS Studio is installed here. And then we can find it also within our software manager. So later, if you wanted to remove it, you can just click on it and then click the remove button here. So that's it for the video. If you enjoyed this video, then leave a comment. If you want to see anything else, just leave a comment below the video, and then I can create additional instructional videos. Thanks.